right, big news heading into the Dolphins 2024 season. Very critical season. Mike McDaniel gets a big extension to 2028. So I'm going to go over the mostly good, some bad, a little ugly of this deal. And some people will say, oh, it's terrible because they don't like him. Some people will say, it's totally awesome. It's a perfect move because they love him. But every move in the NFL can go one way or the other. This could be you could see the Dolphins win a playoff game, get a load of picks next year, and then go to the next level after that. And you've got Tua, and you've got McDaniel, and you've got Greer as well, all working together, the main components of the team, driving you higher and higher to ultimately get pretty high, which you're happy with, or the ultimate success. But it could go the other way as well. So we don't know until it plays out. There's a lot of sense in this move, but there should be a little concern as well. And mostly it's not with Mike McDaniel. It is the first extension, legitimate extension I've seen in a long time. I know that Sperano, he got the fake extension because Ross got caught on the plane heading to Harbaugh. That wasn't a real extension. There was no real continuity there. He was on the hot seat. And then I think maybe Wani got one too, all the way back. But that's the last one since Shula, I think. So we're talking decades since the last legitimate extension for a head coach. And if you don't like Mike McDaniel, he took us to 2 playoff games. We have seen some success. And if you love him, well, he hasn't taken us to the next step. And so it's this holding pattern where, I think it's a good move. We don't know if it's great. It could end up not being so hot to try. But I don't think he's the guy that you can say, if things don't work out, it's on him. So the extension to me is fine. You sign Tua to a long-term deal. Him and Tua like this. They work well in their concepts, although I think some things can step up. But maybe he develops his concept, his scheme to further push Tua to even further heights. Adding this tight end is a big deal this year. Improving the offensive line might be another one. Adding some audibles. There's things that can happen. But these two guys work well together. They like each other a lot. And so it all makes sense, really, when you really look at it. So I don't think you can really hate this move because the reality, if you don't like everything about the Dolphins, maybe you could say that. And some people don't. I have my concerns about the whole suit. But Stephen Ross, I've been saying it for a while. Chris Greer is not going anywhere. Chris Greer will not leave until Stephen Ross leaves. Stephen Ross is old. Good. I'm not saying he's old, but he's in his 80s. He doesn't have it to rip this whole thing apart and bring a new GM in and all the stuff that goes along with it, getting to know the guy and deal with him. He's been with Chris Greer since for 20 years now? Not 20 years. How long has he been around? See, 16 years, 17 years. So there's a comfort level. And Stephen Ross runs the show. And he's not going off Chris Greer. And Chris Greer understands Tua is loved by most of the fan base or liked by most of the fan base. Or they believe, hey, we got to give this kid a shot. There's a small amount that totally doesn't believe. I disagree, except for the injury part. Most of the fan base thinks that McDaniel's a pretty nice guy, and he's shown some stuff. They haven't seen any success since the flood. And so Ross has signed everything, locked it all up into 2028, which makes sense. But we have to remember that everyone's happy now. Those last two, but if we step back this season, we don't win a playoff game for the next 2 or 3 years, they'll go back and say it was a bad idea and he's a da-da-da. So let's just see how this thing plays out. It makes total sense with all the commitment. But I do have my good points, some bad, and a little bit of the... tonight, I'm going to have Steve Malloy from Real Talk Fins Talk on the live. Come check it out. We're going to talk football. He's a good guy. And I'm looking forward to that. So definitely come with questions. We'll dig into this McDaniel thing, the team heading into week 1, and whatever you want to talk about. Also, I'm a big fan of Locked on Dolphins with Kyle Krabs. I had an interaction with him on the Twitter thing. Like, I really wasn't even paying attention. And somehow he mentioned me in his last podcast on 12 personnel and kind of disagreed with my findings. So I'm working really hard to put one of my best podcasts ever to, it's a study process of what he said to try to find out if what he's saying is true. But from really what I've looked at, I disagree. And this doesn't mean I don't like Kyle Krabs. Kyle Krabs, I think I've subbed to him on YouTube, on Twitter, and I think he's a valuable resource. But disagreements happen. He disagreed with me and brought my name up in the podcast, so I have to respond. So that will be coming out probably Saturday or Sunday. Anyway, so that's the whole deal. So the good. In football, Chris Greer got a little heat, and I gave him some heat about the continuity. These are the same guys working together. There's a lot to be said about that if they're the right guys. And McDaniel is here. The players like him. There's a style. There's a flavor. Some of the older school guys like me don't like his personality. I mean, he's not the coach I grew up with. I mean, I was in military school at 6 marching, and if I didn't do what I was told, I had to do 25 push-ups. And then I played football, and it was always hard. So he's not the coach, but I think he's pretty funny. I think the coaches, maybe it's this new thing that this is the kind of guy you need. I'm still not totally 100% sold. I think he's a nice guy. I do have my concerns about the discipline aspect and the steel aspect of him creating a real iron-like character to drive these players and this thing through the hardest of times. I don't know if he could do that. But overall, I really like the guy. So continuity is awesome. Talked about Tua. Tua is developing. And I do think there's things that need to be added. And if these guys are locked together, the good news is they have that security. They have that continuity. They're not on edge. And so that's a good thing. And so this is the best success we've seen in 20 years because we had a playoff game under the Juan stash. But really, we went to one playoff game with the Tuna era, but we've gone to 2 now. So I totally get this. This is a good thing. And I'm not a big fan of Chris Greer, but Chris Greer now knows, hey, you know what? Everything I got is locked in. I could see my vision for the talent and what I want to do, and I can not really worry about getting fired or anything, so I can draft for the long-term deal. And there's good and bad to that. So let me get into the bad. This doesn't really drive urgency. And trust me, I've been a fan since 1978. And I can count over the last 25 years, 30 years, the amount of playoff wins we've had and even appearances. And so I like that what he's done here as far as the feel-good feel, the potent offense, and getting to this postseason. But it's been flops. Although, that Bills game was really close. We could have taken that. And, it was on him, but he was a rookie coach. So you really have to kind of say we were almost on the edges first season to getting our first playoff win. Second was a total wipeout. But this, I don't understand fully why we couldn't have waited to the end of the season if we were all about winning the highest level. For urgency, guys, football, if you haven't played on any level, and it's a little different in college. I got in there a little bit, and it's the seriousness of football people. Once you start getting to college, even the lower levels is crazy. I remember I've said this before. I was a walk-on. The walk-on running backs were doing their thing, and the running back coach saw the kid go down screaming, blew his knee out, ACL. And I get that piece of garbage off the field. He had his reps. He had to get in. And it was intense. It's very intense. You've got to produce or you're out. And that's not fun being out, whether it's a player, but even worse as a coach, and I assume as a GM and stuff, and owner. Maybe not so much an owner because they make plenty of money no matter what happens. So I don't know if this really sets up urgency. I don't know if this move is the best to get us to be the best team we can be. I think it's a good move. I think we could have waited to see what happens. And you know what? If he wins a playoff game, then you just go hog wild and send him, secure him to a long-term deal. So I don't think it's terrible so much, but I just don't feel like this was the highest level urgency move. But I'm not totally against it. Now, the ugly part, I don't think it really matters. The coach, you can fire a coach even if he's got lots of money tied to him, and you get a new guy in there, everything changes, no big deal. Even Tua, something happens, you don't like Tua, you can get off him. Look what they did last year with the Broncos with Wilson. So these two are key pieces. These are pieces that you can move in and out, even if you have really high attachments to it. But the ugly part is Grier is a made man. And people have been wondering, what is he doing with the offensive line? Now, guys like Kyle Krabs and some other people, it's all good. This is a good offensive line. It was a good offensive line last year, and that's their eval. He's doing a great job. Look what he's done. Okay. But there is no urgency. And this is why he can field an offensive line, in my evaluation, like this, because he's locked in. He is locked in, and it's official because McDaniel's locked in, Tua's locked in to Ross, and nothing will change if things aren't successful until early is probably 26, 27, maybe 27, because there's just too much tied into it. And so that is, again, that it could be great. All this stuff could be great if we take it to the next level and we keep advancing and we even get to a conference championship, make it really close. I mean, that would be tremendous for this franchise. But if not, you could end up being like a Marvin Lewis, as far as McDaniel and the Bengals. The Bengals fans were very happy with Marvin Lewis early on, but after a while, it was like, come on, dude, win a playoff game. This is no good. And so there's a lot of happiness about the showing up, but it will dry up really quickly, but we're locked in. So this could end up being an unbelievable point of the franchise, fishtailing back up to being the top, or it could be a lost decade, only to 27, 28. But really on the real ugly side is there's a content provider, big time. I think he's a pretty good guy. I don't know him. He seems like a real nice guy. But he had a quote. He was saying to somebody, I try to tell these people, content providers, you give the customers what they want and you have goodwill towards the franchise. And it makes total sense from a business model if you're a content entertainment provider. But with this with Grier locked in, McDaniel locked in, Tua locked in, the media is going to have to kind of toe a little bit of a line because journalism would say, hey, maybe I could say this thing. It's not going to make the franchise happy, but it's what I'm seeing. It's what the evidence point. But unfortunately, these media guys, they're tied in. They have to make the franchise happy or they lose access. They can have problems. And if you don't believe this exists, it's, I'm not saying they're controlling everything they're saying because you can watch Chris Perkins the other day wrote a kind of challenging article. But the media now understands this is the group that's locked in. I've got to kind of make the franchise happy. I've got to kind of cover a certain way. And so journalism will get kind of pushed away and kind of lifting up, not everybody, I'm not saying everybody, but it's going to be more difficult for guys to do a Chris Perkins like what he did the other day because these guys are locked in. He was like, hey, we were talking last year. Doesn't Chris Grier have to provide us a big season, a playoff win to justify where he's at? If this season we step back, it doesn't matter. He's here. And if we fail next year, he doesn't matter. He's still here. These guys are going to be here. And so you're going to have to get a towing of the line if things don't work out. It doesn't mean it's not going to. It could very well. But if it doesn't, to me, that's the ugly part. I do this to obviously provide entertainment. I do this because I want to keep the gig and I want to get subs and all that stuff. But in my soul, I was trained as a journalist, and there's like a certain point of integrity that even if it doesn't suit my clicks or my relationship with the franchise, but I don't got any, I still got to do what I feel is right, whether I'm right or wrong. You savvy? So overall, I think this is a wise move because Ross isn't going anywhere. And he wants Greer, and Greer isn't going anywhere. You've signed Tua to a big contract, and he's not going anywhere for 2 or 3 seasons, so it just made total sense. Will it make sense in 2 or 3 years? God, I hope. I really do. I'm tired of this. I'm getting older. I almost died 2 or 3 years ago. One of the first things I thought was like, I'm never going to see the Dolphins win a Super Bowl. But I don't know if it's going to. And so this is the good and the bad, ugly. And that's really it. I think we just got to wait and see. Pray that we have a very good season this year. Because if we lose, just imagine the outside media, not even our own media, the outside media, the talk, it's going to be tiring. So let's just pray we have success. Let's pray that Chris Greer is the guy. Ross has found the right guy. Let's pray that Mike McDaniel is the right guy and he has success. And Tua is the right guy and he has success. And everybody does well. Get tired of this. Tired of I just want to be smiling. So anyway, this is Curtis saying, be well, go Fins, Curtis out. Start building your own online sportsbook today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.